Me being good with my finances does not give you the right to steal all my money.
I don't know.
Man. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tabletop Travel Guide. This is the podcast where we explore fictional worlds and civilizations right from the comfort of our own table. I'm Sam. I'm back. I am slowly planning a takeover of the podcast. They don't know yet. It's fine. I've been playing tabletop games for about 10 years. Currently, I'm playing in 3 campaigns, and I'm in the midst of writing a campaign. I blame this podcast for making me want to write it.
Perfect. I'm Ryan. I've also been playing for about 10 years. I'm playing in a game. I'm DMing in a game. Last week in our game, our players decided to test their railgun in Pathfinder. So, you know, it's a strategy.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm Tyler. I was one of the testers of that railgun in that campaign. I'm playing in that one. I am playing in another one with a different group, and I am GMing a third for a different group.
So now for the real reason I had to come back, it's for things I said wrong.
Our favorite segment.
We haven't had this segment for a few weeks.
Yes. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. Anyway, it's less of a mispronunciation and more of a just misspoke because I got so excited. But previously I had stated that Rovagug was the rogue beast, and he is the rough beast. Slightly different wording there.
Straight to the dead vault with you, Sam.
Straight to the dead vault.
Oh, I think I'll stick around.
Yeah, I think that is all we had for the things we mispronounced / missaid.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to talk about Druma, which is north of Andoran, on the
coast of Lake and Carthen.
I'm like, what's the word?
Yep.
Lakeside property, my favorite.
Lakeside property.
Yep.
And I'm not going to lie to you. Until I started reading about Druma, I knew nothing about Druma.
I knew there were merchants.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was a country.
Right? Up until every other episode, I kind of come in with some amount of knowledge. Druma, I knew nothing.
Perfect.
So Druma. The one thing that we do know about Druma, that we've talked about a little bit, is the people who live in Druma are the Kelids.
Yes.
And we have talked a little bit about the Kelids, mostly in them getting beat up by Taldor, and then beat up by Cheliax, and then
beat up by
Andoran. So the interesting thing about Druma and the Kelids is their history goes back almost 11,000 years.
Oh.
But there are 3 recurring themes of Druma and the Drumish people. 1, don't mess with their religion. They have a couple of religions throughout their history, and things go bad when people try to mess with them.
I told you deities would be important.
Right? 2, being merchants and trade are in their blood and history.
Okay.
And 3, they get beat down a lot.
Aww.
The Kelids get... Yeah, we'll get there, but there's a lot of... Poor Kelids. They get knocked down, they get up again, they keep going. They started out all the way back in the Age of Legend. So remember, we have the Age of Creation, we have the Age of Serpents.
Age of Serpents.
And then we have the Age of Legend. And they were basically traders from the beginning. Before the Age of Legend, around that time, they were nomadic people. And once the serpent folk empires collapsed, they started kind of experimenting with horticulture. So they started farming, developing new permanent settlements based around farming rather than hunting and gathering. Kind of grew up into an area and settled down in where Druma now is.
Early civilization.
Okay. This area was known as the Makridi blade culture. Known for their really cool stone blades that they used for tools. They were still on Lake and Carthen, and so they used Lake and Carthen and all the rivers to basically trade extensively with other countries. They settled down and started trading, which is kind of cool. They became the Avestan spanning network of trading. Archaeologists had found different tools and stuff from all over Avestan in Druma. So, it shows that they weren't isolation. They were very open to other cultures.
Okay. And yeah, Lake and Carthen's kind of centrally located, so that makes sense.
Yeah, Lake and Carthen is very centralized. So it kind of made sense to just kind of be the hub of the trade world.
It's a pretty big, span for a civilization going from something nomadic to something that's building to something that's trading and spreading out so much. It's pretty incredible when you think about the scale of that.
Yeah, and again, this is all based kind of in the Stone Age. Doing this kind of, I don't know what infrastructure they have, but doing that kind of infrastructure in the Stone Age is pretty impressive.
It's like strapping logs together. You can't be super sophisticated yet.
Right. Yeah. At this time, you had merchants that are in their blood, and also their first kind of religion came up out of this during this time as well. It was a very traditional religion rooted in kind of a two-way responsibilities of individuals and communities, and then also including nature and the afterlife. So a very much kind of
collectivism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool just working, being one with nature, being one with each other, building community, doing all that stuff. Also notably, in the Palikar Forest, which is in that area, there's a lot of fae that the speakers of the Pale were kind of intermediaries with the fae. So they were kind of one with each other. They would make deals with the fae to kind of let them sustainably source some wood and stuff for their...
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the scale of the Palikar Forest? I know we've talked about those big foresty areas in other places like Andoran. Is this also a large chunk of the country, or is this a smaller area?
It's pretty big. It would probably be somewhere in between what was the forest from Andoran?
The Arthfell?
So somewhere between where Arthfell used to be, taking up the entire half, and what it is now, which is smaller.
Yeah, it's a prominent part of the country. I'm just looking at a map, but it's not dominating the nation.
Yeah. So let's move forward about 700 years. The Age of Legend ends. The Age of Darkness begins. It's around this time that the first blow to the Kelids happened.
Oh, no.
Again, the Macridi blade culture thrived for millennia, but never kind of coalesced into a formal state. But while they didn't get, taken out by other people, they couldn't fight a meteor. And this is when Earthfall happened.
Yep.
So, yeah, we're talking about Earthfall. They, unlike the elves in Keonan, they couldn't teleport out. They didn't go underground.
Right, yeah.
They basically had to abandon their unsustainable cities and then kind of go back to a nomadic lifestyle. So they're still in the area. They're still, nomads, but they're not having their trade hub like they used to be.
It's like a civilizational reset button.
Yeah.
Those darn meteors just ruining everything.
Right? No one expects a meteor to show up. So during the Age of Darkness, one of the other things that comes up, what's going to be a big intertwined history with the Five Kings Mountains. You can almost think of this episode as a part 1 to the Five Kings Mountains, because
And that's the 10th blow to the Kelids.
Yeah. So here's where we hit the second blow to the Kelids. Orcs. I don't know if we've talked about the quest for the sky. We might have mentioned it briefly, but basically the dwarves used to live underground. At one point, they're like, we're tired of living underground. We're going to go find the sky.
We're going to go up.
And they kept digging upwards until they found the surface, which they were like, we're at the sky. And everyone's like, no, you're not. You're at the surface. The sky's up there. And they're like, we're at the sky.
It's all in perspective.
It's all in perspectives.
Yeah.
But one of the main things that the quest for the sky caused was, while they were moving northward, skyward, yeah, while they're moving skyward, they just displaced a ton of orcs. They pushed the orcs out of their current homes on a different level of underground up to the surface. And so the Kelids, who are basically dealing with the aftermath of a meteor, now have to deal with a bunch of orcs that just show up in their land and are now just destroying all of them.
Is there like a prophet who's like, well, the worst is behind us. It can't get any worse.
Yeah,
Never say that.
It can't get any worse.
It's basically when, Christopher Columbus showed up and the Native Americans were already kind of ravaged by disease, just happened to be right before.
Sure.
And then they're like, what could get worse? And then Christopher freaking Columbus shows up and just makes everything
So
worse.
Christopher Columbus is an orc in this scenario.
So because they're weakened, they couldn't totally fight back. So they're trying their best. Once the dwarves show up on the surface, they form a kind of coalition and fight back the orcs. So hey, humans.
The dwarves are helping.
Yeah, the dwarves are helping in this case.
Oh, so
Okay.
the dwarves and the Kelids
Yes,
form a coalition.
sorry. The dwarves and the Kelids.
Orcs,
Dwarves
okay.
show up, partner with the humans, and together they push the orcs back.
Do the dwarves at least acknowledge, like, hey, we might have caused some of this mess. We're here to help.
Yes, so the dwarves help, but rather than seeing like a bunch of survivors, because they don't know that Earthfall's they don't know the context.
Sure.
They just see humans and are like, "Oh, honey, you guys are pathetic. We'll help you."
Oh.
Basically, they cause this entire thing, and they're like, "Oh, you need our help." At this point, the aid of benevolence kind of turns into condescension, and the dwarves colonize Druma, Galt, Multhun, and Nirmathos. Kind of all neighboring countries where we're at. So that's kind of where we get to a few millennia of dwarven rule
Okay.
in Druma.
Oh, so the dwarves like have a little empire going.
Yeah, so they come in, they build these sky citadels because even though they're on the surface, they think they're on the sky.
They're
Marketing.
reaching towards
They're
the
reaching
sky.
towards the sky.
Marketing.
Yeah, so they build these sky citadels, one of which is in the Five Kings Mountains. There's also a few in other parts of the world as they expand out. But the kingdom that is basically over Druma is called Targath. Targath. I think Tar is I'm not sure about dwarven culture, but I think it's kind of the kingdom of Targath.
Okay.
I can't wait to find out we pronounced it wrong.
Can't wait for that, and probably translated it wrong. I don't know. Druma actually kind of thrives under there. They are mineral rich. They get back to their agriculture. They get back to settling down, and they're kind of abundant and self-reliant.
This doesn't sound like a bad gig so far.
It's actually not too bad of a gig for a while, but in return for grain taxes and kind of political control, dwarves protected Druma, quote unquote. But the dwarves eventually kind of started having this whole Byzantium law system. They just kept adding more laws and weird things that were already kind of weird, but then eventually kind of clashed with Kelid beliefs. So this kind of boiled over in what will be the first of 6 Drumish rebellions.
6?
6. So, yeah. So the first Drumish rebellion. A dwarven landowner basically killed a Kelid herder's goat.
Oh.
This is how rebellion starts.
I love these stories.
Again, remember the Speakers of the Pale, this religion. The dwarven landowner was like, I'm not paying that blood price. I'm not paying you for your goat. And the Speakers of the Pale were like, well, in this case, violence is always an answer. And so their religion was like, hey, you're good. Go fight this guy.
DJ Kelly is the house.
They responded with violence and then dwarves looked at that and were like, this is vigilantism. So we got to cut down on these Speakers of the Pale because this is clearly a bunch of vigilantes and not a traditional
They basically call it a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the dwarves crack down on religion. And like I said at the beginning, do not mess with the Kelid's religion. So they were not happy about this. And they came to defense of their faith. So over 3 years, they basically went on a guerrilla warfare campaign against the dwarves.
Love it.
Unfortunately, dwarves are pretty strong. They have a much bigger kingdom. Eventually, the Speakers had to flee to Isker and across Lake Carthen to not be killed. And even though the dwarves won, the Speakers were cast as martyrs and kind of became a rallying cry of independence for millennia.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't mess with our goats.
Don't mess with them.
Oh, I want to make that flag. Let's make that flag.
Don't mess with them.
Don't tread on my goat.
Yeah. Similarly, we won't go into detail, but the Fae also ended up going to war with the dwarves because the dwarves kept clear-cutting their forests for charcoal.
Oh.
The Fae just can't catch a break
They can't
as well.
catch a break. They also get knocked down. So it turned into a 17-year war called the Charcoal Wars. Yeah. But honestly, besides these kind of these conflicts, Dwarven authority kind of went uncontested for that entire age. So we skip ahead to the Age of Destiny. And around here, not much happens during the Age of Destiny. Most of the historical records are dwarvish administrative records. So just normal bookkeeping stuff, that's surviving records from this time.
History's written by the winners, so they're not putting all the Kelid fun stuff in there.
Yeah,
Sure.
so again, there are only 3 recorded incidents of major violence. There was a Whisperfall offensive, which is the dwarves versus the orcs. And then there's the 2nd and 3rd Drumish rebellions, which there is nothing written that has survived about the Drumish rebellions, except the 2nd rebellion ended with the execution of Ark of Tall Fern,
Okay.
who, I don't know who that is. They don't know who that is. No one knows who this person is. Just this guy died at the end of this rebellion.
Do we even know what side he was on?
No idea. I looked for follow-ups. No more comment. This guy got executed at the end of the rebellion. Moving on.
He was a simple farmer, a farmer of ferns.
Yeah. And then the third started as a cause of a famine between minus 896 and minus 893 AR.
Sure.
So we've had several millennia. That's kind of uncontested. Not much history about. A lot of records are lost. So kind of the biggest age for Drumish history is in the Age of Enthronement. After millennia of ruling the kind of whole area, Targath began to go into decline. And this is also around the time that Taldor was doing its explorations.
Woo!
So this big, massive dwarven kingdom falling into decline. Taldor's going around exploring the crap out of Avestan. And so that obviously, Taldor and the dwarves start butting heads. And during all this time, the Kelids are also kind of pushing back. They're seeing, there's other countries that can fight the dwarves. Like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
We're going to start pushing back as well.
Yeah, the enemy is my friend kind of thing. Yeah.
So this leads to the fourth Drumish rebellion.
Amazing.
We're on 4 of 6. This one started by a cobbler.
Yes.
And if you don't know, that's someone who makes shoes.
Yes, yes. A cobbler was very incensed by a tariff that was imposed by the
Oh,
dwarves.
George Lucas would be so into it now.
And so the Kelids were like, hey, all these laws really suck. They don't make any sense. You know, we're looking at millennia of rule and millennia of laws the dwarves have just been kind of stacking on the Kelids.
Please tell me we dumped a bunch of tea in the lake and killed it.
That tea in the lake. So they push back and they're like, hey, can we just simplify the government and like have some sort of help for the people who are getting like wrecked by these laws? And so what would you do in the situation of you probably have a rebellion from a group who's been notoriously rebellious? What would you do as the dwarves?
If I was a dwarf,
Yeah.
I'd probably ignore it. Probably just be like, well, but I have crystals to mine or some kind of thing that's way more important than these barbarians.
I don't want to be a dwarf. I want to be a revolutionist.
There you go. Okay.
Viva la revolution!
All right, so now you have your two camps. I'm going to be the dwarf. Sam is the Drumish.
So you're basically right, Ryan.
Yes!
They don't fully ignore it, but they decide to debate it for months among the dwarves.
Well, I mean, there's order, okay?
There's
we have to
order.
have order and recourse. We need to form a committee, and then that committee needs to form a subcommittee.
Yeah.
And we need to get witnesses. There's an important procedure to follow here.
So yeah, the dwarves are discussing this for months.
Playing right into my hands.
And then eventually, of course, the whole time, other Kelids from Isker and neighboring lands, so they kind of start forming together bands of rebels that by the
Yes.
time the dwarves show up and are like, hey, we'll concede to like 10% of what you want. The Kelids are like, too late, man. We're already burning down everything.
Well, the subcommittee of subcommittees only approved 10% of what they asked for, so that's
Yeah.
all we can offer.
Right. So the speakers of the Pale, who at this point have been kind of long dead, the songs and the feeling of the martyrdom of the speakers of the Pale from millennia ago still course through these Kelids' veins, and they fight the dwarves for a year for independence, and then they get shut back down.
I was really like, maybe we'll win, even though I know we're not going to. I just got very invested in this particular revolution. Now I'm sad.
We have more revolutions, though, still. Don't worry.
2 more!
2 more. The dwarves kind of, they don't punish everybody. Well, they don't kill everybody. That
would be barbaric.
They kill the kind of the ringleaders,
Yeah.
the bad apples of the
Yeah.
group. But hilariously, they send down a punishment on the rest of the Drumish men that they're denied beards and beer.
That's right. For your insolence, Sam, you will no longer be allowed to drink beer or have a beard.
Yeah,
But my chin is so weak.
right? This turned into a punishment that ended up getting repealed about 50 years later. But in the meantime, this punishment kind of turned into a cultural identity for the men of Druma, where they're like, yeah, we're going to snub Dwarven culture because Dwarven culture is very big around alcohol and beards. They're like, we're not like them. While at the same time, the women of Druma are making a counterculture where they hold gatherings where they drink
Amazing.
and
is okay.
debate and perform music. And so,
I love it.
Yeah. So all
My
the
people are great.
right? So they're like, yeah, the men can't drink. Yeah, that's because they're better than you. The women, we're also better than you, and we're gonna party.
And our tolerance is probably fantastic.
Yes.
I'll drink those dwarves under the table.
And so it's kind of from these gatherings that the modern Drumish culture arises. We come to the next religion that sprouts up in Druma. About a century after the beard debacle,
Beard debacle.
a craftsman named Calistrade was born into a family of guilders and bookkeepers, and soon before he was supposed to take over the family business, he became deathly ill for several weeks. He was delirious, bedridden. He would only occasionally wake up to write incomprehensible stuff in a notebook and then pass out again.
Cool.
Once he recovered, he kind of had a different air about him. He didn't take on the family business. He negotiated with his siblings to buy out his inheritance and then just disappeared for 8 years.
Cool.
Once he came back, he was wearing noble regalia, had a ton of money, and just kind of became a kind of cult leader. He
Cool.
didn't want to talk about how he made all his money.
They
everything,
never do.
Right? But instead he talked about his strict diet and careful personal rituals that got him to where he was. One of which was his ritual of sexual prohibition. A lot of suitors tried to come after him, and he was like, nope, not doing anything. Vow of celibacy. He even wore long gloves so he wouldn't have to touch anybody skin to skin.
Oh, I hate him already.
Yeah.
I don't.
And he refused even handshakes. And hilariously, up until even now, the prophets of Calistrade, which we'll talk about in a second, still wear gloves. And like, it's impure to touch non-believers.
Huh.
I feel like this is the guy that's like, here, do all of these things, but also, my parents were super rich, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm
Right.
going to tell you these things.
Yeah, like buy my book and also eat a bunch of kale every morning. And yeah.
Though to be fair, like he didn't get an inheritance so he made money somewhere. He just didn't tell you how.
It seems a little shady.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
a little shady. Anyway, so within a decade, he had dozens of people kind of following his cult.
Oh boy.
Surprisingly, this cult was making a ton of money. There were a bunch of rumors of like, is this like deific blessing? Like, how are they making their money? And the cult grew up until 251 AR, so past Eredin, right, raising the Starstone, where Calistrade disappeared and was presumed dead. So this comes back, ton of money, builds a following, grows that following, disappears.
How long was this man alive?
He was... That's a great question.
Oh no, I asked you something you don't know.
I don't actually know.
You gave me a date for when he died, so then I was like, whoop, when was he born?
I think he was human, so probably somewhere in the early 200s.
So he
or
wasn't
late
also
100s.
saying that his strict personal rituals
64.
were also making him
He
live
was
forever.
64.
Oh, okay. So then he was born like late 100s,
187
Cool.
AR.
late 0th century.
Yeah.
After this, his kind of disciples splintered. They gathered all of his documents and wrote. Every group had a kind of canonical book of the prophecies of Calistrade. And for 150 years after that, there was a lot of arguing between the factions of who was right, what was correct, until some adventurers found Calistrade's final resting place and his basically body, where the faction said, oh, we can deal with this now. So they paid off the adventurers to keep it a secret. They used effectively magic to like bring Calistrade back to life a little bit to answer all the questions they were fighting about.
That would solve a lot of real world problems.
You're like, we found him. Okay, what's the deal? And he's like, here you go. And so after that, they all kind of reconciled. We're like, okay, we now have the answers.
Just a quick bit of necromancy. Yay!
Yep. And then they became a united religious institution called the Callistrocrats. The Callistrocrats. So
Say that 5 times fast.
The Callistrocrats.
The Callistra cats.
There was only one offshoot called the Golden Solidarity that stayed separate. They kind of lived on the Isle, what's now the Isle of Terror, and they were very much, they were super wealthy. They gave a bunch of money to their communities. When Tarbafon, at the time just a necromancer, heard about a lot of rich people on this isle, and he's like, I'm going to go steal that gold.
Oh.
Oh.
Showed up, brought an undead army onto the island, wiped them out, took all their gold, and turned them all undead.
Awkward.
Ouch.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you go to the Isle of Terror now, you'll still occasionally find undead just covered in gold.
Still a flex, even when dead.
I know, it's pretty cool. So the Golden Solidarity went out in 861 AR. Let's fast forward a little bit. We're still under Dwarven rule, but
Oh my god, still?
we're still
After all of this.
After all this is happening, they're kind of flourishing again. They're traders. The Callistrocrats are making a ton of money. I know.
Sorry, I can't take that name seriously.
It's fine. It's fine. So the Callistrocrats making a ton of money. Druma's kind of becoming pretty wealthy. Then in 1551, the Five Kings War happens, which we will talk about in the
Five Kings Mountains, yeah.
Five Kings Mountains episode. But during this war, they started taxing the crap out of Druma, as you do.
Well, I gotta pay for my wars somehow.
Yeah, you gotta pay. The dwarves gotta pay with their wars, so they're getting taxed a ton.
Me being good with my finances does not give you the right to steal all my money.
I don't know.
Man.
I don't know. You're pretty good with books, so like I'm gonna take all those books and turn them into catapults or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Not
which
the
is
books.
so, like Sam said, the speaker of the Kelids, they came out into their 5th Drumish rebellion.
Number 5.
They're like, heck no, stop taxing us, you're killing us, this sucks, we're not paying you. And so one group of dwarves sent out, and they said, we're gonna go out, we're gonna take the money, and we're gonna execute the rebellious leaders who are trying to go against our government.
Gotta put down the rebellion.
Yeah, and so they were successful in putting down the leaders of the rebellion.
Woo!
But then immediately got wrecked by the rest of the people who were very angry that their leaders just got.
Oh.
Eventually, they couldn't squash the rebellion. And all the other dwarven kingdoms were like, that one guy got messed up because he lost to a bunch of humans. They still didn't gain independence, but
we're getting closer.
The victory did inspire some secessionists, and specifically the Calistocrats. So a group of 14 of them, who were incredibly rich up until now, selling war assets for
Classic.
the Five Kings War. They're like, yes, we'll give you stuff. Yes, we have a lot of trade. They kind of financed a lot of the war because it was making them very wealthy.
The owners of the Pitchfork Emporium.
Yeah. So they created a joint trust called the Promise of Calistrade to raise money for political influence. They posed as dwarven investors and then started buying up land and buying up assets. All the dwarves in the kingdoms were like, we need more money. We need to sell off our land. You know, some of our, like some Drumish land, some Isker land, whatever. Like, we'll buy it back. It's fine. Once we win the war and unite the Five Kings Mountains, we'll buy it back. And this group of dwarven investors are like, yes, we'll hold your land. This is great. The whole time being a bunch of human Kelids.
Sure.
Posing.
Playing right into my hands.
Yeah, so they started buying lands. By 1664, so about 100 years after the Five Kings War started, they owned a ton of territory. Like, most of the territory of Druma, they kind of owned again. And the whole time, they're still financing the war. And each of the kingdoms, they're, like, buying their war debt. So they're, like, giving them money and being like, oh, yeah, we'll, you know, we'll buy your debt and all this stuff. So everybody is now indebted to this group of dwarven investors who are not dwarvish.
I mean, I don't like humans, but a contract's a contract.
Yeah, contract's a contract.
I got my receipts.
So this could have gone on for a long time. But unfortunately, Taldor shows up.
Oh.
So
Like they do.
During the Taldor Army of Exploration, number 7,
Womp womp.
they ran through the Iskari Kelids.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this. They're like, hey, instead of doing anything beneficial, we're just going to go just wreck the Kelids because why not?
Yeah.
And even though they kind of took over Isker, a lot of the Iskari warriors emigrated to Druma instead.
Anyone who like survived that conflict.
Yeah, anyone who survived, like they didn't lay down their arms. They're like, screw it, we're going to go to Druma.
Okay.
And so all these warriors who were like, yeah, we just got beat down by Taldor. It kind of sucks. Stoked dreams of independence again, which led to the 6th rebellion.
This is when it all goes down. Number 6.
Yes. Or does it?
Oh.
So at this point, the southern half of Druma declares independence and founds a meritocracy.
Can you explain what a meritocracy is? Because when I read that, I was like, a mediocracy?
A mediocrity.
That's not right.
They founded a mediocrity. It was fine.
It was mediocre.
Yeah, so they found a meritocracy called Jeleg. And basically what it was is like the rulers of this government are entirely based on your own personal merits. You basically work yourself into this government. However, it didn't last long. So in 2133, this is when the rebellion happened. The meritocracy only lasted like 11 years.
Oh.
9 years.
Ha!
And it collapsed back into Dwarven rule. Basically because instead of doing the normal Druma thing of, hey, we're going to still be trade partners, they're like, isolationists. We're not going to deal with Taldor because we don't like them. We're not going to deal with dwarves because we don't like them. Let's deal with the rest of Druma. And the rest of Druma's like, you guys are kind of rebellious. We don't really want to mess with that.
Look who came crawling back again.
Yeah, and so the loyalist Drumans are like, we don't want to be like caught trading with a rebellious state. So like, we're not going to do this.
We flew too close to the sun.
Yeah. And so on top of that, on top of having no real trade partners, They also had few regulations.
We went the laissez of fairs.
Yeah. But the unfortunate part is that caused a lot of favoritism and resentment. So, in a meritocracy, having a bunch of nepotism and favoritism doesn't work that great. And then the final blow to Jaleg was when there was a truce with the Five Kings Mountains, or Five Kings War. They came down, quashed that rebellion, and then, went back to their war. But during this time, what would become the national army of Druma, the Mercenary League, was founded. So a lot of the disaffected soldiers of the rebellious state kind of wandered for a while at this point. They quashed the rebellion. They were still all the warriors, and they're like, well, what do we do? So it caused a lot of banditry, and then it drove the personal bodyguard industry.
Ah, okay, there you go.
And, that kind of became the Mercenary League. So then let's go forward a couple hundred more years. So 2331. The Five Kings War has been going on for centuries. But in a span of a single week, all the fighting stopped. Because all of the kingdoms got the same letter that your debts have come due.
Stop! Yes!
No! Curses! The contracts come back to bite me!
So the promise of Calistrade, all the way back, who started buying up lands, financed it the whole time and said, you owe us all the money we've been paying you.
That's incredible.
And that's when these are not dwarven investors. Oh no, these are the Kellids. And the dwarves were pissed. They started threatening and said, we're going to fight back. But the promise of Calistrade had figured this out. With all of their money, they funded the Mercenary League to become a whole actual militia. And they were ready to basically be a military deterrent. And after centuries of fighting, dwarves were like, we can't fight that.
Oh my gosh.
We did it!
So, what is now known as the Curse Accord, because Curse is the capital of Druma.
Yep.
They made a deal. End your stupid war, recognize Druma as an independent state, and we will forgive most of the debt while refinancing the rest.
We're very benevolent.
Yes.
Dang it.
So the dwarves had no choice. They weren't going to fight the Mercenary League. They recognize independence. Druma becomes an independent state.
I can't believe I got hit by the Uno reverse card.
Yeah.
Whoop,
After
whoop.
6 violent rebellions, all it needed was basically a loan.
A notice of collection.
A notice of collection.
That's hilarious.
Gain independence. Because of that, the Callistrocrats, who were behind this, Druma held a convention and created the Resplendent Bureaucracy, which is the current government in Druma. And the Callistrocrats basically said, hey, we did all this, we're taking power, and we're in control of the Resplendent Bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's a reasonable.
Yeah, that's fair. And so then, for, several years, they could do no wrong. They gained us independence. Perfect, we love it. But then they kind of came under blast after several years because there was a growing wealth gap.
Oh, yep, there it is.
Weird.
So there were week-long riots that ravaged Curse, called the Burning Gloves riots, because remember the Callistrocrats wear the gloves. Yeah, so the Burning Gloves riots. And then to their credit, they actually just kind of redid the entire system. So they changed the taxation model. They paid for stimulus programs. They increased upward mobility. They capped the wages that a member of the Resplendent Bureaucracy could make, which discouraged Callistrocrats from becoming life government workers because they can make a ton of money as profits, and they couldn't make a ton of money as government workers.
Sure.
So yeah, it actually kind of works out. At one point, a humanocentrist faction takes over for about a decade, kind of ruined a bunch of relationships. The already bad relationship with the dwarves, they ruined worse because they became super isolationist. And when the dwarves got attacked by the orcs, which caused basically the downfall of the Five Kings Mountains, Druma was like, you're on your own, buddies. They didn't come to the elves' help when Tree Razors showed up and started tearing through Keonan.
Cool.
Which is, a Tarask level threat. So their reputation, even though that group lost power over a decade, their reputation suffered for centuries.
They burned every bridge.
Yeah, they burned all the bridges possible. So that happens for a while. Druma goes back to normal. All this changes, again, in the Rending, which we talked about a little bit in the Andran episode. We're going to talk more in the Dwarf episode. But basically, the volcano Droskar's Crag in the Five Kings Mountains area, there were tremors under it. The dwarves were like, we got this. We're handling the volcano outlet. And Druma was like, we should probably prep for this. So Druma preps, the volcano explodes, the Five Kings Mountains is very much destroyed or wrecked for a while. And at this point, Druma comes in and is like, we want to help. We're offering aid to the dwarven refugees. And at this point, the dwarves are like, actually, that's pretty nice and helpful. So that kind of mends a lot of the bridges, burnt bridges of the past.
So we're on the upswing.
Yeah, we're on the upswing.
Okay.
And there was
Druma
another...
remembers all the beatdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And prepped for the natural disasters.
Yeah, exactly. They knew how to prep. So we kind of go to the end of the Age of Enthronement. Druma kind of flourishes. A bunch of skilled immigrants come in from, at this time we still have Galt kind of burning down. You have a lot of revolution elsewhere. So Druma's kind of becoming the hub of artisans and immigrants and just skilled workers. And so they're flourishing with their trade connections. They're financing part of Cheliax's war because, war's going to make money.
Hey, if there's one thing I feel like they keep coming back to is financing conflict.
Yeah. And then they also invested in caravans to travel to Tian Sha. There's a land path called the Path Agenhai? I don't know.
We're going to have to look that one up. I
We're
don't
going to
even
have to look
know.
that up. I'm not sure. But it's a route bridging over to Tian Sha. They helped finance that. So Druma making a ton of money, making a lot of allies. Things are looking great. That brings us to the Age of Lost Omens. Remember the big event that causes every country to go nuts?
Yep.
Eridan's death.
Friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod, Eridan. Unlike every other country who went to chaos when Eridan died and said, oh, we were going to be Eridan's friend. Oh, we were going to be Eridan's friend. They didn't feel slighted at all by Eridan's death because they weren't following Eridan. They were following the
Callister Cats.
The Calistocracy.
Because our friend is money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they used his death as a way to make more favorable trade routes to people. So they're coming in there like, yeah, we can make a bunch of money.
Hey, buy low, sell high.
Yeah. Again, they keep taking in more artisans.
Sam is losing it across the table.
Hey, I heard you lost your god. You want to buy a necklace?
Yeah, well, you think about it. Eridan died, and then kind of a lot of countries fell apart.
Yeah.
And so they accepted just a bunch of people who were like, hey, we're trying to be safe and prosperous. You guys seem to be doing fine. They're like, have you heard the good word of Calistrade?
We have a lot of weird tenants and we like to wear fancy gloves.
Yeah.
But they'll have a job.
Yeah, so basically, during the Age of Lost Omens, Druma is thriving. They're living their best life. The only other thing that kind of comes up during the Age of Lost Omens is the Goblin Blood Wars, which we talked about in the Andoran episode, and kind of threatened Druma's trade routes, so they're like, we can't deal with this. So they sent their mercenary league to join with the Hell Knights and the Eagle Knights. So it's kind of a three-parter alliance to kind of push back the invasion. But yeah, other than that, it's kind of been peaceful. The only big current thing is they've been building up their mercenary league due to the visions of their High Prophet. A couple years ago created this Edict of Preparation, is trying to prep for something. No one really knows what.
Is he a doomsday prepper?
Maybe.
Oh boy.
So this is High Prophet Keldor, who's the kind of top of the Callistrocrat.
Okay.
And he is kind of the most powerful person in Druma. He's both very savvy when it comes to deals and also has magic clairvoyance. So no one knows what he's prepping for, but currently the Mercenary League is kind of growing up. So yeah, that brings us up to current day, and current government in Druma has 3 arms.
Do they all wear gloves?
They all wear gloves. No, only the Calistocracy has gloves. So they are the prophets of the church. They wear their white gloves. They officially have no authority over how Druma runs. But officially. But they have a ton of influence. They have a ton of money. Sure. They do a lot of backroom wheeling and dealing.
Of course.
They have a lot of political influence, even if they're not officially making day-to-day things. Except for the High Prophet. The High Prophet Keldor is the current one. They have total control of the affairs of the entire country as kind of a veto power. It's kind of a last resort. If the government goes off the rails or whatever, the High Prophet can step in and be like, no.
It's a threat.
It's a threat.
Yeah.
The second group is the Resplendent Bureaucracy, which was created during the Curse Accords. These are made up of either prophets who want to get experience in political contacts, or civil servants who are like, I want to help the government. There are hundreds of administrators. Each city has certain numbers of administrators based on their size.
Yeah.
And, it kind of runs normal hierarchy of clerks, run around. They report to administrators, who reports to effectively the chief administrator or a mayor of a town. There's a high administrator above all administrators.
Like a governor, kind of?
Kind of like a governor.
Okay.
And then all of those report to an oversight council, and they meet about different...
Larger government issues.
Yeah, larger government issues. And then finally, there's the highest position is the intercessor, which is technically an honorary position, but they do have veto power over the oversight council. So, like, if the high prophet is the head of the calistocracy, the intercessor is kind of the head of the resplendent bureaucracy, even though the high prophet is above the intercessor.
Okay.
Then finally, you have the Mercenary League, also known as the Black Jackets.
Ooh, fashionable.
Yeah, so they got created out of, the Southern Rebellion of Jaleg. And because of the promise of Calistrate, was molded into the most well-funded and, one of the most elite armies of Avestan. Druma has an infinite amount of money to prepare and pay this group of mercenaries or, this army. And so their, loyalty is legendary among the world in the inner sea region.
Huh.
And they're called Black Jackets because where the prophets of Calistrate wear all white and all gloves, the Mercenary League wear all black. They've been around for 2,500 years, and they're well-trained, well-armed. They're just kind of the jewel army of Avestan.
They're prepping for something.
They're prepping for something. Again,
and looking so nice while
and
they
looking
do it.
fashionable.
Yeah, so that kind of brings us to the end of Druma. Like I said, at the beginning, I knew nothing about Druma. At the end, I'm like, this place is cool. Again, it's a pretty good place to be. Central trade hub of the world.
Yeah.
Started from the bottom, and now we're here.
Yeah, they have trade all over the inner sea region. Yeah, the Kellids might have been beat down a lot, but they had the last laugh.
Finally a win for the Kellids.
Finally a win for the Kellids.
Woo!
Good job, Sam.
I don't know that I'm totally on board with all of the things in the government, like the white glovey people seem a little bit intense, but, I'm always in favor of winning a revolution.
Yeah.
You can always root for the underdogs.
Of course. So that's all I got. So I think we will have a quick break, have a word from our sponsors in Druma, and we'll be back with some more campaign and character stuff.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
I'm Crazy Kolak Sophis, owner and proprietor of Crazy Kolak's Mercantile. I am slashing prices so hard you'd think I had Vorpal runes on my hands. Looking for a carriage to transport your supplies in? Come talk to Kolak, because I'm selling them for 85 gold. Worried some bandits are going to ambush you on the Golden Road of Kadira? Come talk to Kolak, because I'm practically giving away armored carriages for 300 gold. Or maybe you're just trying to take care of that big shot rival across the street. Come talk to Kolak. Poisonous daggers are on sale for only 100 gold. We are located in the trade district of Curse, right down the street from the Sublime Square. So grab kids, grab your gold, and come talk to Kolak, and I'll make you a deal today.
And welcome back. Thank you to Crazy Kolak for sponsoring that lovely mid-episode ad. And now we're going to pop over to Ryan for campaign fun times.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about, out of the blue, I don't know where I came up with it, but Crazy Kolak's Mercantile campaign.
I love it.
Yeah, so, we're located down in the capital of Druma, in Curse, and this is not a campaign of political intrigue, it's not world-ending stakes. We are talking about basically a pawn shop owner.
Yes.
Yes, and Kolak himself, he married a noble Chelish woman named Elena Sophis and immediately took her name because he wanted to make sure he had some legitimacy to really, tie the two together and,
makes sense,
establish that nobility a little better. And he is running a fairly successful pawn shop, mercantile enforcement ring, some loan services, kind of just giving the opportunity to buy and sell anything. And the idea I had here was the players have kind of been deeded Crazy Kolaks. Once Kolak acquires enough money to buy a place in the bureaucracy or the calistocracy.
Okay.
So he wants to transition out of private industry into government work or into religious work. That part still doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah. Don't think about it. They
so
make money.
So that's the hook for the players is once he's gone, the players get the deed to the whole business.
So is the campaign you're working for Kolek? Or like the
Yes.
campaign is you are starting with the deed?
You are, no, like you're working for Kolek,
okay.
but you can almost even do like a two-parter where like the first half is you're at the finish line. You got to get a few more jobs in to
Okay.
kind of get Kolek over the finish line. And then the second half could be your early adventures renaming Crazy Koleks.
I like it.
Amazing.
And then all the missions, I mean, we can go anywhere. We can be like protection from thieves and like maintenance on the buildings and like the things that Kolek owns. We could be out there doing trade convoys. I'm very excited to maybe run a repossession, like a repo mission.
Yes.
Where you have to like travel to somewhere in Cheliax and be like, no. But like that armored carriage, actually, we're going to repossess that.
have to do be repo, man.
Or like like go into the Five Kings Mountains and like actually follow through on one of those repossession notices. Like, sir, you can't. That magical hammer, I need that magical hammer back.
Gosh. I love the idea of campaigns that are just kind of, like the stakes are not high. Like,
It's like slice of life, but for Pathfinder.
yeah.
And so my last kind of requirement for the campaign is any player or any character coming in, they need to name and spec out a rival mercantile or like market group so that like when the players come to the table, there's like pre-made like six to eight rival organizations
Oh my gosh.
that could also like be conflict points and like areas of interest.
Would any of the players be able to like be plants, or would you have
I mean, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
okay.
Of course. So then Sam's going to somehow have to sneak her character into this.
Oh, it works really well.
Oh, yes, let's go.
Okay.
Okay, so I did roll randomly
Yeah.
Cool.
for class and ancestry and just the general things.
And alignment.
And alignment, yes. So luckily, I rolled for a neutral evil gunslinger.
Oh my gosh.
Her name is Veska Quickdraw.
That's
Yes.
quick draw.
Love it.
She made up the last name herself. She is Kelid, so historically they don't really have last names, but I felt like in the realm of being a hired hand, which is what she is,
Nice.
she has given herself a last name with a little bit of ego and also some description, so you're more likely to hire her
That's fair.
when
I love it.
you need someone to protect your stuff.
Yeah.
So that is
Kolek
what
likes
she
guns.
does. Yeah. So she hangs out in Druma. She dual wields pistols.
Ooh.
And her goal in life is to make money. And she's
Perfect.
chill with some murder. That's fine. So she shows up. She'll shoot people if they're trying to like steal your stuff. And she would totally join the party to help Kolek and take over his pawn shop and protect the wares. I was not aware that I would have to come up with a place. However, I already have one.
Yes.
Oh,
Her
gosh.
rival is going to be Edwina's House of Oddities.
Oh no.
Ooh, okay.
I think that Edwina is probably like some type of witch class person and owns a lot of weird kind of occulty things in
course.
her shop. And I think that Veska was like really into some type of weapon in this shop that was cool, but Edwina didn't want to sell it to her. So naturally, her goal is to bring down all of Edwina's stuff
Well,
and
yeah.
steal the really cool gun thing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Kolek doesn't like the witch crowd. Like he feels like that degenerates, or like that's not the crowd that he's trying
Yeah,
to sell to,
yeah.
and that just it's not the vibe he wants on the street nearby him. So that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
I like that you just made up a shop on the fly.
This is my superpower.
Oh my gosh. So okay, so she's gonna go repossess something with her twin pistols.
Yes.
Just like holding somebody up at gunpoint. Like no.
And she's neutral evil, so she's here to get the job done.
I built her out to level 3 just to get a better feel for who she was as a character. So I did give her haughty obstinacy as one of her feats, which is basically like, my ego's so big and I'm so much better than you, and it gives me buffs.
Oh, perfect.
Nice.
So she's obviously a delight
Obviously.
to hang out with,
I love it.
and thinks very highly of herself while she is repossessing things.
I love it.
She's going to make a great future owner of Colex.
Yes, I think that she would be great. If you try to steal from her, she would be like, cool, I have 2 guns. I don't care which one I shoot you with.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
All right. So all that being said then, how are we ranking Druma out of 5?
I would say bags of, or how many white gloves?
1 to 5 white gloves?
Yeah.
Now, more gloves is positive, correct?
In this case, more. It's always, the more is always positive. It just doesn't matter what.
Okay, so 1 to 5 white gloves.
5, 100%.
5 out of 5 white gloves.
I imagine this is similar to Andoran, where it's like, this would be a fantastic tourism industry. It's super safe. It's super wealthy. Like, you go to visit Druma, and it's just all the fanciest markets, all the fanciest, like, lakeside situations.
I mean, when I go on vacation, I like to go shopping. So this is very much the epitome of, get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Is
So
that
5 gloves for me, too.
5
I
gloves.
5 out
would
of 5 gloves.
go shopping here and run around and try not to get sucked into a cult.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 out of 5 gloves just because the Callister cats kind of scare me a little bit.
Okay, fair.
I feel like I'd be like walking down the street and they'd be like, "Sir, you can't be out on the street at 3:30 p.m. without your gloves on. Come on."
Well, no, it's the gloves are only for the profits.
Oh, I know, but just I feel like I'm going to accidentally run
That's
afoul
fair,
of
you
some
might.
specific religious ordinance.
Fair.
4. I'm going to give 4 out of 5.
4. I mean, still a great place to vacation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Official tabletop recommendation: would vacation in Druma.
The tabletop travel guide seal of approval.
Seal of approval.
Love it. Cool. Okay. Well, with that then, we thank all our listeners. We hope you're enjoying it. Again, I think all 3 of us are having a lot of fun here.
And welcome to Sam as an official member of our co-hosting podcast. She's
Yep.
now a certified tabletop travel guide.
They gave me my own microphone.
Yes.
Are we certified? I didn't get my certification. Should I have been certified for this?
Oh God, we're gonna have to kick you
Oh
out.
boy. Okay. Sam, it was nice meeting you. Okay. Bye-bye. Well, before I get kicked off the podcast, you can head to our website, tabletoptravelguide.com. We'll post character sheets, pictures, any kind of other stuff we think might be fun or interesting about the episode.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Cool. Well, until next time, safe travels, everybody.
Happy travels.
Bon voyage!